The trans-Saharan trade was a defining feature of Africa's history long before European colonialism reshaped the continent. Stretching over 4,000 miles across the vast, unforgiving Sahara Desert, the trade routes connected sub-Saharan Africa to North Africa, the Mediterranean, and even the Middle East. Through these routes, goods, ideas, and cultures exchanged hands. Gold, salt, and even more abstract commodities such as religious beliefs, knowledge, and technologies flowed along these trade routes. This ancient trade system wasn't just an exchange of goods, but a catalyst for economic prosperity, cultural transformation, and religious diffusion, particularly the spread of Islam. Today, we'll delve into how these trade routes shaped Africa's economy, culture, and the spread of Islam. To understand the significance of the trans-Saharan trade, we need to first examine the origins of these trade routes. The Sahara Desert is often perceived as a formidable barrier, an inhospitable landscape that separates North Africa from the sub-Saharan world. However, the desert was not always an obstacle. Early desert traders recognized its potential as a conduit for trade, connecting two distinct and culturally rich worlds: the ancient civilizations of North Africa and the prosperous kingdoms of sub-Saharan Africa. By the 1st century CE, Berber traders had begun navigating the Sahara. The introduction of the camel, known as the ship of the desert, was key to the success of trans-Saharan trade. These animals were well adapted to the harsh desert conditions, allowing for long, grueling journeys that could span weeks or even months. By the 4th and 5th centuries, trade routes began to emerge, and caravans moved goods across the desert to meet the needs of both North and West Africa. The first major trade empires to benefit from these routes were in the Sahel, a semi-arid region south of the Sahara. The Kingdom of Ghana, which flourished from around 300 CE to the 1200s, was one of the first to capitalize on these trans-desert exchanges, establishing itself as a key player in the emerging trade networks. Gold was, without a doubt, one of the most important commodities in the trans-Saharan trade, and it was the wealth generated from gold that allowed West African kingdoms to rise to power and influence. West Africa, particularly the regions of modern-day Mali, Ghana, and Songhai, was rich in gold. The gold-producing regions, such as Bambouk and Bure, attracted traders from across the Sahara, eager to acquire this precious resource. Gold from Africa was so valuable that it shaped the Mediterranean world's understanding of wealth. The Roman Empire and later Islamic merchants eagerly sought African gold to fuel their economies and craft their coinage. West African kings realized the significance of their gold wealth, and by controlling gold production, they secured both political power and the ability to demand tribute from neighboring regions. A prime example of this wealth was the reign of Mansa Musa of Mali. Mansa Musa, one of the richest men in history, ruled the Mali Empire during the early 14th century. His wealth was so immense that it became the stuff of legend. During his famous pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, he reportedly brought with him an entourage of thousands, including soldiers, slaves, and camels laden with gold. He distributed so much gold in Cairo that it caused a short-term inflation in Egypt. Mansa Musa's wealth and generosity helped solidify Mali's reputation as a dominant force in West Africa and a hub of trade and culture. While gold is often seen as the primary driver of West African prosperity, salt played an equally important role in the trans-Saharan trade. In many ways, salt was just as valuable, if not more so, than gold. Salt was crucial for preservation, especially in the hot, dry conditions of the Sahara. Without salt, it would have been impossible to preserve the vast quantities of food necessary for sustaining large populations in West Africa. Salt also played a crucial role in diet and health, as it was necessary to replenish the minerals lost through sweat in the intense heat of the region. Salt was abundant in North Africa, particularly in places like Taghaza, where salt mines were located. Berber traders carried salt across the desert in caravans and exchanged it for gold and other goods in West Africa. The exchange of salt and gold formed the backbone of the trans-Saharan economy. For centuries, salt was so valuable that it was even used as a form of currency in parts of West Africa. In fact, the word salary comes from the Latin word salarium, which referred to the payments made to Roman soldiers in salt. In the West African context, salt was also seen as a symbol of wealth, and many of the great empires, including Ghana and Mali, controlled both gold and salt production, which gave them an immense advantage in the trade world. The trans-Saharan trade was not only an exchange of goods, but also an exchange of ideas. One of the most significant ideas to spread along these trade routes was Islam. The spread of Islam in West Africa was facilitated by traders, scholars, and missionaries who journeyed across the desert as part of the trade networks. The arrival of Islam in West Africa was gradual but transformative. By the 7th century, Islamic merchants from the Arabian Peninsula began to visit the North African coasts, and through them, Islam began to make its way into the Sahel. Initially, Islam was embraced by the elite and ruling classes, who saw it as a unifying force and a way to enhance trade relations with the Islamic world. For example, the Kingdom of Ghana's rulers converted to Islam as early as the 10th century. By the time of the Mali Empire's peak in the 14th century, Islam had become firmly entrenched in the region. Mansa Musa's pilgrimage to Mecca was not just a political move, but also a religious one, symbolizing the growing influence of Islam in the West African empires. Islam brought with it not only religious beliefs, but also cultural and intellectual practices. The spread of Arabic as a written language enabled West African rulers to communicate with the broader Islamic world and facilitated the growth of Islamic scholarship. Cities like Timbuktu became intellectual centers, drawing scholars from across the Muslim world. The University of Sankore in Timbuktu became one of the world's leading centers of learning, offering courses in law, medicine, astronomy, and theology. The integration of Islamic scholarship and West African traditions created a vibrant intellectual culture that is often overlooked in historical accounts. Timbuktu is perhaps the most famous symbol of the fusion of commerce, culture, and religion in the trans-Saharan trade. Located at the crossroads of major trade routes, Timbuktu became not only a thriving trading hub, but also a center of learning, attracting scholars, merchants, and pilgrims from across Africa and the Islamic world. By the 14th and 15th centuries, Timbuktu was home to one of the world's largest libraries, containing thousands of manuscripts on a wide range of subjects. These included texts on mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and Islamic jurisprudence. The city's scholars made significant contributions to both African and Islamic intellectual traditions. Timbuktu also played a key role in the trade of salt, gold, and other commodities, helping to connect the wealth of West Africa to the broader world. Its mosques, madrasas, and libraries were symbols of the intellectual and religious flourishing that the trans-Saharan trade helped foster. Despite its remarkable success, the trans-Saharan trade eventually began to decline. Several factors contributed to this decline. One of the most significant was the rise of maritime trade routes. Starting in the 15th century, European explorers, such as the Portuguese, began to navigate around the coast of Africa, establishing direct sea routes to India and the Americas. This shift in trade patterns led to a gradual decrease in the importance of the Sahara-based routes. The internal political struggles within the West African empires, combined with external invasions such as the Moroccan invasion of Songhai in 1591, weakened the once mighty trade kingdoms. These forces disrupted the flow of goods and ideas along the desert trade routes. By the 17th century, the trans-Saharan trade had significantly diminished, though its legacy endured in the cultures and economies of West Africa. The trans-Saharan trade was one of the most important trade networks in history. It was not only a trade route for gold and salt, but also a conduit for the exchange of ideas, cultures, and religions. The spread of Islam, the flourishing of intellectual centers like Timbuktu, and the creation of powerful empires like Mali and Songhai were all made possible by these trade routes. While the rise of maritime trade routes and political instability led to the decline of the trans-Saharan trade, its legacy lives on in the rich cultures and histories of the West African region. The influence of the trade system on Africa's development cannot be overstated, as it laid the foundations for the vibrant, diverse, and complex societies that exist today.